Good morning, 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 good morning. Magandang umaga, selamat pagi, etc., etc., etc. Any other languages? Oh, 안녕하십니까? Anybody else? Anybody else? Hold on one moment. I got a little setup to do. Oops. As classroom teachers, we know that timing is everything. Time. I'm going to start with a book. It's just a book. The Nutraceutical Revolution. I have no idea what it's about. Why am I holding a book? Can we cue up the PowerPoint, please? All right. Why am I holding a book? You get out, bad student. No, because one of the sayings we have in English is never judge a book by its cover. There's another copy of this book in the bookcase with an entirely different cover, but it's the same book. When we're thinking about academic research, keep this in mind. Now, today I want to talk about some of the things that we heard yesterday. And if you get 3 scholars in one room, you'll get 4 opinions. Why? Because if my paper is exactly the same as your paper, my paper doesn't get published. We have to make distinctions. That's what publication is about. Advancing the field, contributing to the body of knowledge. So, let's see if I get this right. We start our academic journey understanding that we're playing the game. Nice lead in, Grindel, thank you. Talking about gaming. Now, I don't mean gaming in the classroom, the game approach to education. I don't mean that. I mean that when we play a game, we have to know the rules. If we're playing chess, it's chess. If it's sipak takraw, it's sipak takraw. Whatever the rules are, we have to know them. But we also know that sometimes people argue over the rules and some people cheat. And we also know that just because there's rules, that doesn't define how people play. Everyone has their own strategies. Any chess players here? Chess? No, not many. If you seriously study chess, you'll find that there's dozens of different strategies, opening moves. Oh, yesterday, Dr. Labuan and Mr. Mediano were talking about moves in a paper. Okay? When we're working in academia, we have to be aware what the rules are, and we have to decide what's my best strategy, what's my style for success. And if you have 3 PhD supervisors, you know that each of them gave you conflicting advice. And the same is true in the journal writing process. If you have 3 referees, they will have conflicting advice. And we heard a number of presentations yesterday, 2 up here on this stage. 2, is that right? I think so, 2. And in the workshops. And what I'm going to say today is going to be consistent with many of them, and I'm going to refer to those. And in some cases, I'm going to distinguish my opinion from theirs. And it would be lovely if I could give you the one true way. I'm going to evangelize. Okay, there's one way to publish. Unfortunately, that's not true. So that's part of what we're doing today, is we're talking about entering the field. It's a field, maybe it's a minefield. But it's a field. It is not the path, the way. All right, so yesterday Dr. Adamson used a phrase that I really liked, and he mentioned that I would be talking about it today, and I didn't know that I would be, but I am because I love it. He talked about the centering of academia, the idea that there are many forces, centripetal forces, that pull things towards a common ground, a common center. This one he didn't mention so much, but I will. Globalization, that perspective of globalization, that there's a global standard, there is a global best way. Well, when we look at that in what I will call non-native speaker lands, there's no good way to describe it. You know, we could talk about developed and developing or whatever. Lands that are outside the traditional academic center as the world sees it. These outer area countries are pushed to adopt the standards, which are often white, Northern European, white developing countries' academia. If we look at the writings of traditional Islamic scholars, and that's important because we know that in the 1400s and 1500s, when Europe was a black hole of education, Muslims were advancing the field. Those scholars are now discounted. Their knowledge is important, but their presentation style is wrong. Wrong, according to the modern, developed white world. So part of what we're talking about in this weekend is how to get yourself published according to these centering standards. Secondly, and this is the part that Dr. Adamson talked about more yesterday, is that editors and educational supervisors, your PhD and MA supervisors, campus administrators, and your colleagues are all pushing you to that centering standard. Because if you don't meet the standard, it's easy for them to discount your work. To discount your work. As Dr. Adamson said, the periphery is marked. We look at it and we go, that's not native English, or that's not how journal papers are written. They notice it, it's marked. And at that point, it's easy to say, it must be wrong. And you do the same in your classrooms. You tell your student, that's not proper English. That spelling is incorrect. Pull out that red pen, right? Oh, true comment. When I see my children's papers, my heart skips. We have some Koreans in the room, they know I'm telling the truth. In Korean elementary school, middle school, if you have the right answer, the teacher circles it in a big red pen. And I'm like, oh, shh. Because in America, the red pen is only for bad news. And my daughter's like, look at my paper, Daddy. And I'm like, oh my gosh. No, it's 95. Yeah, but there's so much red on this paper. So that's kind of that centering. My background is in US, we don't use red pens, but in Korea, they use a pen to say, oh, good job. I'm much more comfortable with gold stars, okay? All right. This centering is based on this theoretical norm of what a professor's time looks like. Theoretical because it is not really substantiated and it's changing. But in the classic world, a professor spends 40% of his time in research. And maybe 35% of his time teaching. Maybe. Probably less. And then we have this other area here called miscellaneous, which is increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing, more paperwork, more paperwork, more paperwork. And maybe somewhere in here is student advising, student counseling time. And down here is the service time. And some of this service is service on campus, being an official or whatever. And some of this time is professional service, reviewing papers, being an editor, being an officer in a teacher society. This is kind of a theoretical norm. It doesn't really exist anymore. For university faculty, professors. But if you're a part-time professor, contingent faculty, or if you're a high school teacher, your research time is like this. Your research time is time when you're not reading a book to your daughter, right? But if you're not a research faculty member and you submit a paper to a journal, you're battling against people that have 5 or 10 times more time to research than you. You're fighting an uphill battle. Know that. That's part of the game. If you're playing tennis or badminton, somebody else has more talent and more experience than you, you're probably going to lose. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy the process. And sometimes you'll win. And when you practice more and play more, you'll get better and you'll win more. It's a journey, not a destination. Okay. This is an important consideration. And very often journal referees don't make the distinction, and very, very often paper writers don't make the distinction. The research, your study, your work is not the paper that you submit. They're two different things. So if we're doing paper analysis and we talk about the proper tense method should be in past tense, blah, blah, blah. People who subscribe to that. Why? Because the research is done. And now you're writing about your research. They're two different things. As commented yesterday, one master's thesis or doctoral thesis could actually break out into a number of scholarly journal articles. Because a PhD thesis is 250 pages, and you have hypothesis 1, ABC, 2, ABC, 3, AB, 4, and you can make a lot of journal articles out of that. And some people, some PhDs do. Their PhD thesis is their next 3 or 4 years of journals. That's fine, because the research is not the article. They're different. If your article gets rejected, that doesn't mean your research was bad. It might be. But it also might be that you need to revise your article or send your article to a different place. And we're going to talk about more that kind of thing about where does the paper go. That leads us to this idea of positioning. And both of our main speakers yesterday talked about positioning, but in different ways. So positioning the write-up. The research is done now. How do we position this write-up? It might include localization. In some cases, you want your title and your abstract to be very global, and my research applies anywhere in the world. But some journals want that local feeling. I write to somebody and they say, oh, we're really interested in a submission from Korea, even though you're white. We're really interested in a submission from Korea because we don't get much. The more Korean-like, the more focus on Korean that I write, the better they like it. Globalization does not mean vanilla. Everything's the same. Okay? Globalization includes we want a taste of this and a taste of this, and every article, every journal issue should have a couple of papers from different places. We want that accent. A little kimchi here, a little adobo there. I had adobo last night. It was pretty good, pretty good. I love adobo, but my adobo's better than Ouida's. So you can include localization. Some journals are looking for it. And we often position through the title and the abstract. Because then once you get into the article's the article. You know, who was the body? Who were the students? Or the participants? That's all there. So if we're evaluating the research, not the article, if we're evaluating the research, how do we do that? Well, for many universities, we evaluate research based on the grants that you pull in. In Australia today, most professors are under huge pressure to bring in their salary because the government's cutting back. Now, salary is only about 40% of the cost of a professor. Their room, library, all these other costs. But they expect a professor who's making, let's say, $100,000 for a higher ranked professor. They're expecting that professor to bring in $100,000 of research money because the university then takes a piece, and that helps pay for the school. That's an important criterion when the university is evaluating your research. And when you are thinking about research, this is supposed to be part of it. And my university's not happy with me because I don't care. I don't apply for research grants, and they don't like it, and I'm constantly pushed. I'm like, fine, you know, I get job offers every semester. I don't care. I do what I think is right. But that's a criterion. Second criterion about your research is if it wasn't published, it didn't happen. Your research is beautiful. But if you don't write it up, nobody knows about it. Therefore, it doesn't exist. Therefore, the university doesn't count it. The article is not the research, but without the article, there was no research in many people's mind. Therefore, where your article is published is an indicator of how good was your research. Wow, it was an SSCI Scopus journal. It must have been good research. You published in a teacher's magazine. The research must be flawed. I didn't say that's true. That's a perception. We're playing the game. What are the rules? The quality of research is judged by the publication, the name of the publication. Pretty much the same thing. Another way of looking at it. Finally, in many schools, the employer ID is important. If my research doesn't say Keimyung University on it somewhere, my school doesn't give me points. Think about those faculty who are contingent, the part-timers that go from school to school. If the journal takes 2 years to publish, and it says ABC College, and when the journal paper comes out, I'm at XYZ University. XY University says, well, that's nice, but it doesn't add to the reputation of XYZ University, so we don't care. That's the game. That's why you're going to have a hard time publishing, because there's so many people out there who are competing on this level. Because if I don't have so many journals, and that's the next slide, then I must be a bad professor. This is not a true model. This is an example roughly based on a real model, and I won't say where. But if you publish in a journal that is a Scopus listed journal or an SSCI journal, let's say the university gives you 250 points. And if you publish in some other citation system, for example, in Korea, we have the Korea Citation Index. That's 150 points. Korea has a KCI because this allows papers written in Korean language to get scores. Very, very few SSCI Scopus journals include native languages other than English, possibly French or German or Italian. Very, very, very few. 100 points for an unlisted international journal. So I'm in Korea. If I publish in the PALT, Philippine Association of Language Teachers Journal, I'm going to get 100 points. Now, is the PALT journal a good journal or a bad journal? No comment, thank you very much. Okay, but But it's international vis-a-vis Korea. So I get 100 points. If I publish in a domestic journal that's not part of the citation index, I'll probably get 50 or 80 points. Okay. Maybe also for conference proceedings, a full paper in the proceedings, 3,000 words or more. I might get 20 to 40 points in an international conference presentation. I'm here today. There's an abstract in the book. Maybe I'll get 20 or 40 points. If I do a concurrent session, maybe 10 or 20 points. If I do a major session, maybe 30 or 40 points. These are rough. 10 to 30 points if I write in a teacher's magazine. I write in a lot of teacher magazines. Why? Because I'm communicating, I'm sharing a message with teachers. It takes a lot of 10-point articles to reach my annual score. 10 to 20 points for domestic conference presentations, abstract only. There's one more page here. Chapter in a book. Hey, I just got something accepted for a big-time book. Pearson. Really good stuff. And I was recently published in the, encyclopedia, the TESOL Encyclopedia. Big time. This is big time at 8 volume. It's when you go to a good university library, it'll be there. Extremely competitive. I worked my butt off for that. Really. Harder than any journal article I've ever written. And I'm going to get 10 points. Book reviews, maybe 0, maybe 5, maybe 10. How many points do you need in a year? My school wants me to have 150 points per year, and that's kind of soft. That's because I do a lot of service. Other professors, new professors, their objective might be 200 points in a year. Now wait a second, 200 points in a year? One Scopus paper will suffice. But that's so hard. You are competing against people who are putting bread on the table, keeping their job through their research. That's the game. Don't take it personally. Now, I've heard that in Indonesia, many university faculty members are being pressed to publish, something that was never the case before. 15 years ago in Korea, that's what happened. 15 years ago in Korea, many professors hardly ever published. Now they have to. All right, so really, here's our summary. Here's our options. Okay? The stars mean that things are a little more flexible. Proceedings, select proceedings, critiques and shorts, reviews. That's our introduction. I just wasted 20 minutes of your life in an introduction. Thank you. So what's the aim of this conference? Well, one of the aims of this conference is how to write. And so we heard yesterday, midday, Dr. Labuan and Mr. Medriano talking about how to write. Here's a case of its distinction. I want to tell you there's no one fixed design. And if you find a fixed design, like Imrad, some journals are going to say, no, we don't want that. You play the game. Rocket science, it's not. There is no one perfect way. Do we make sections in our paper? Yeah, probably. Do we enumerate, Roman numeral 1 for introduction, Roman numeral 2, da-da-da? Some journals expect it. Some journals hate it. If you make sections, do you make subsections and sub-subsections? Not necessarily numbered, but, methodology. Next section, population. Next section, instruments. Next, da-da-da. Some places they really want lots of sections, section headers, subsections, subsections. Some say, just write, paragraph. Moves analysis. We heard a lot of references to swales and feet and swales and et cetera, yesterday. I hate it. Personally, I think it's nonsense. It's over-analysis. It is the kind of prescriptive grammar that we see. Where did English grammar come from? English grammar came in the 1600s and 1700s from Latin scholars who said, well, English has no rules. We'll make rules. Oh, but people talk like this. People are stupid. We're going to make rules. We're going to make English a prestige language like Latin. We're going to follow the... I grew up saying ain't. Ain't is good English, no? Oh, but every grammar teacher will tell you ain't proper English. Ain't is not proper English. But ain't is spoken by nearly 40% of Americans and more than 25% of all Brits and a whole heck of a lot of Scots. Perfectly good English. How do we say he is not, he isn't? How do we say you are not, you aren't? How do we say I am not, I am't? I ain't going. It's good English. So these prescriptive guides about how thou shalt write a grammar paper, these are normative. This is somebody else creating standards and you don't have to follow them. But they can be a helpful guide, but they're a guide, not a rope. Okay, what are the instant fails? You submit something to the journal. Well, somewhere between 50 to 80% of all submissions get bounced immediately. 50 to 80% of papers that are sent to journals are immediately rejected. Why? Well, maybe because the spelling, the grammar, and the typos are just horrid, and they go like, you didn't make any effort at all. I don't even want to look at it. I went through one page and I said, just no. Wrong presentation style. This journal requires APA and you wrote Chicago. Well, another journal wants Chicago. But I sent it to this journal and they rejected it, so I'm sending it to you. Yeah, but you didn't change the style. Bounce. Wrong content for this publication. Don't send technologies article to an ESP journal because probably they don't want it. Bad data, poor methodology. This goes back to research. Did you collect the data well? Is it representative? All those data collection issues that too often busy teachers don't have time to address. Yesterday in a workshop, I mentioned to one person, this is really good, but you should have this, this, this. Oh, we can't access the data anymore because of school regulations. Well, it looked like a really nice study, but your data is not good enough for publication. It's just not. Methodology. Did you treat your data the right way? I am not a statistics guy. Actually, I hate statistics. I hate statistics with a passion. My master's degree included a book, How to Lie with Statistics. And I believe that. You can say pretty much anything you want if you crunch the numbers the right way. Weak or old citations. We'll come to this in a second. Non-responsive to the editor. The editor writes back to you. You got to write back immediately. And if they tell you we want this, this, and this, you say, yes, sir, I will do that. And you get it back to them. Fast. Same with the referees. Now, we mentioned 3 referees for the same paper on the same journal giving conflicting answers. You have to address it. You can disagree respectfully. Show them why your way is better. It's possible. Length. If the journal says 5,000 to 7,000 words, don't send 11,000 words. And don't send 2,500 words. If they give you a guideline, follow it. If they don't write the guideline, read the journal's previous issues. Find out what is their common denominator. What is the average, the norm, the regular for them? So, where am I pointing? Okay. Some journals are known as coaching journals. That's not a formal term, that's my term. There are journals that want to help you become better. These are the minor leagues of journals. Any journal that puts right up on the front their rejection rate and seems to be we only accept 7% of our articles. That's probably not where you want to go until you've reached the major leagues. Associational publications. You know, the teacher societies. That's a good place to start. Subject matter has to match. Has to be of interest. Is it a current interest? Because that might have been a hot topic 15 years ago, but nowadays people aren't interested. The last line needs no further comment. They tell you to fix it, you fix it, or they'll drop you. That's what coaching is. Peer and paid coaches, your friends can help you. You can hire somebody. If you have a language problem, hire somebody who's good in language. Again, Dr. Adamson mentioned yesterday that his mom, a native speaker of English, had a non-native speaker of English help her in communicating. Didn't say it has to be a native speaker. Somebody who can help you present your knowledge the right way. Recognize your peer or your paid coach's expertise and rely on it. But also recognize that nobody is an expert on everything. You know, I can help my students with a lot of things, but if they want to talk about statistics, I send them somewhere else because I can't. Share back with peers. Peers help with you, you help with them. It's called collegiality. Often when I sign messages, I write collegially, Rob Dickey. If we're not sharing with each other, don't expect anything back. Also notice that your peers and your paid coaches, they're coaches. Finally, it's up to you to perform or not. They're not responsible for your failure. A big problem in Southeast Asia is what I call literary poverty. Your libraries just aren't that good. It's expensive. You know, my university, I'm very blessed. They do very, very well. They have thousands of journals available electronically. Every issue. Next month there's a new issue. I'm very lucky that way. If I were teaching in the Philippines or Indonesia, I don't know what I would do. But here is an offer. It does not go out of this room. Video, you can't hear this. This is off mic. Okay. Read contemporary literature as much as you can before you start writing. Of course, contemporary literature should guide your research, but it definitely has to impact your writing. Read the particular publication you want to write to. Remember yesterday you heard a comment that you had to have at least one citation from that journal in the last 3 years. All right? You need to read and cite the journal you're writing for. Come on. Okay, words. We're language teachers. Words are our business. Most publications have recommended links. I mentioned. Follow that. Be clear. Define your terms. If your readers don't know that word, explain it. Use the right terms correctly. This is not Humpty Dumpty. Who was it in Lewis Carroll who said, words mean what I want them to mean? You know? No. In a journal, you're writing for an audience. If they don't know what you're talking about, why should they read you? Be concise. Revise. 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 Trim. 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 Graphics. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Only if it's a good picture. So if you have a good image, illustration, picture. Use it well. Don't say what you said. Present your graphics properly. Present your graphics properly. Follow the rules. I need to wrap up. I'm going to go through the next couple things quickly. Voice. Some people say you have to write like a native speaker, but I don't think so, and many journals don't think so. Is this a nest issue? Is this a language perspective? I don't think so. This North American, British, Australian, North American language standard is unfair, but some journals follow it, but many do not. I want to point to Kanagaraja, however he says his name. He was the incoming editor to TESOL Quarterly, and he made a point of saying, we want to hear other voices. We want to hear the non-standard voice. We're not going to insist on American spelling. But if you use strange words, make sure that they are some kind of a normal strange word, not your personal idiosyncrasies. You get one. That's my standard. You get one personal idiosyncrasy in your paper. Only one. Scholars, well-established scholars, can write the classic essay, you know, the papers that we saw in the 1950s, 1960s, as folks talked about yesterday, about the changing styles of writing, the scientific method. Yeah, well, if you're David Noonan, you can write whatever you want. But you're not David Noonan, nor am I. Journal's voice, editors change, journal voices change. Politics is an academic reality, be ready for that. Some journals are very global. The Asian EFL journal was designed to address Asian voices. Publication fees. Just because you have to pay something doesn't make it predatory. That's so misunderstood. Okay? The reader pays through subscriptions. Author pays sometimes. The question for predatory is, what are the standards? If they promise, pay $400, it'll be published next week, that's pretty bad. If they say, pay $400 and maybe it'll be published in 18 months, well, that sounds like some of the Elsevier journals. Very top-ranked journals. Cost $400 to publish. I need to finish up. Come on. There's other places people get money. This PowerPoint will be available to you. I'm not yet sure how, but it will be available. You can go through the rest of it. Open access journals. The Asian EFL journal is an open access journal, right? What are your costs? Pre-publication, post-publication. These are all fees things. We're not going to focus on this today, but it's here. Last. Associations. Open access listings. Take a picture of this. There's more listings, but that's what I want you to know. If you can't afford a good library, if you can't afford 10 subscriptions, I can't. Read. 3, 2, 1, change. How did I start my career? I started my career writing book reviews. I started writing book reviews for an online magazine. I wrote more than 50 for these people every month, because the book companies will give you books. They'll give them to you if you will write reviews. And if you don't like the book, you tell them, I don't like the book. Don't write, I don't like the book. That's not kind. But you tell them back, I didn't care for this book. They probably won't even ask you to send it back. You say, I'm sorry, I can't write a favorable review. Okay. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.